until the recent budget difficulties. It's just that the performance you were rewarding was to enroll students, not to enroll students to complete. And so I think performance funding could be a strong impetus to what you're doing. And then the growth in enrollment would be paid from the marginal tuition revenue for all three systems if you increase tuition to allow them to do that. You have two dilemmas that I see that are very difficult to overcome. One is that you really don't have any goal for identifying what your desired outcomes are. And so you lacking state goals, it would be very difficult to establish a performance-based system. And the second is that you have no entity to plan and implement these ideas if you go on. The elimination of the CPEC leaves you without any coordinating capacity at the state level. CPEC was not a terribly effective organization. I think it's generally recognized that was the case. It was designed to be not a very effective organization. But the absence of anything like that gives you really no capacity to work. You could do it within the legislature, but then the governor wouldn't be engaged. You could do it within the executive branch, but then the legislature wouldn't be engaged. You need something that encompasses and that has the capacity to work with the systems of higher education, with the legislature, and with the governor. That's what I sort of came to say. I said it, and I'm open for questions.
Questions from the commission? Yeah, Tom Quinn. Is your button on? Tom, is your button on? There it is.
Now it is, all right. I'm not sure I understood exactly what our present system is and how it works for funding for students. Could you go through that a little slower for me? In other
Sure.
words, we're obviously we forgive tuition in certain situations. You're advocating we should collect it, but if you could talk through that in a slower way for someone who doesn't know much about this.
Sure, be glad to. What you have today is a fairly standard system for the Western United States, which was you believed in low tuition or no tuition. And so you think of tuition as sort of a penalty on students, necessary penalty to sort of fill in. You have state appropriations. They used to be funded on the basis of enrollments, but for quite some time, it's been basically on sort of a come as come will basis. If there's funding, the systems get some. There's some negotiation about it trying to be fair, but there's really no basis behind where the funding comes from the state. Then you use tuition to fill in the gaps in the California State University system and in the University of California. Your tuitions are not out of range for the types of institutions. They're pretty average. But in the community colleges, you've been very reluctant to charge tuitions, and if you charge tuitions, to collect it, so that you have roughly $1,000 as the advertised tuition in that system. But most students don't pay that. They receive a tuition remission from the institutions. There's no reason for the institutions not to provide the tuition remission because the tuition revenue is not kept at the institution, but comes back to the state and is reallocated out. So that you've got no incentives for there's no way in which a community college can generate revenue from tuition for all practical purposes. And now, there are a lot of people who don't believe institutions should have an incentive to generate revenue from